Welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial, we're going to be working on McCall's 6690. In this particular tutorial, we're going to be focusing on dress D, which you can see right here. This pattern comes in two size groupings, so you're going to want to make sure you grab the right size. You can see it right here on the side of the envelope. Let's take a quick look at an example of the dress we're going to be making in this tutorial. This is a girl's pullover dress that has a button in the back. It also uses a sheer overlay fabric. So you can see the fabric is a little bit sheer in the sleeves and the ruffle at the bottom, but it has a lining in the main part of the dress. It also has a fabric belt, so you can tie the dress either in the front or the back. To make sure you're cutting out the right pattern, you're going to want to consult the body measurement chart located on the top flap of the pattern envelope because retail sizing and pattern sizing are not always the same. You can see this is split up by children's and girls. This top row here, these are the actual sizes, and then underneath it are the measurements here in inches. So you're going to want to measure the child's chest, waist, and hip, and you're going to take these measurements and try to line them up best you can in one column. So whatever column works best for you, that is going to be the size that you're going to cut out, and we're also going to use it to figure out how much fabric we're going to need. Looking at the back of the pattern envelope, the first thing I like to look at is the suggested fabrics. So here they're telling you what fabrics they suggest that you use in order to complete this garment. So this here is the main fabric, and then you're also going to need a lining fabric. Also, we have notions. For all the garments in this envelope, A, B, C, and D, you're going to need 1 3/8 button and then one package of 1/2 inch single fold bias tape. And then if you're doing A, you're also going to need these other things, but if you're not doing A, as we're doing D, then you can go ahead and skip what they have under A. Once you have your fabric picked out, you can then move on to figure out how much fabric you're going to need cut. So first you need to find your view. I'm doing view D, so here you can see A, B, C, and D, so I only need to look at the D row. You have 45 and 60. This relates to the width of the fabric. Either the fabric is 45 inches or 60 inches in width. Mine is 60, so then I could go along and follow the 60-inch row. I'm going to find my size. I'm doing size 3, so I'm going to go down the 3 column until I get to the 60-inch row, and then I'm going to need 1.5 yards of fabric. You can see here they also have lining. We have lining here and lining here. This is for lining A, B, and D, and this is for lining C. Again, I'm doing D, so I'd only need to look at this row, which is for 45-inch width fabric. I go again across the 45, down the 3, and I'm going to need 1/2 yard of lining. Let's go ahead and break out our directions. So on page 1, you're going to see a diagram like this with all the views. We're going to be doing view D. Underneath that, it's going to be a chart of all the pattern pieces located in this envelope. Underneath that is a list of the pattern numbers, and these numbers go with these pattern pieces up here. So 1 and 1, and then they tell you what it is. It's the front. To find out which ones you need to cut out, you're going to see up here is top A, B, and dress C, D, and belt. If you look at number 5, it says ruffle B. If you are not doing view B, you do not need to cut out piece 5 because they've already designated this is for B. Same thing with 6, lower ruffle, B. If it doesn't have a letter behind it, that means it's for all views. So if I'm doing D, I'm going to need to cut out 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, there's a D right here, and 8. Pulling out the tissue paper from the envelope, you're going to see all your pattern pieces printed on it, and they're going to have numbers right in the middle, just like this one, and this again correlates to the list we were just looking at. But if you're unsure, you can look right underneath it, and it states exactly what the pattern piece is for, and then it'll have the letter of the view that it goes with. You're going to cut either right on the line or just right outside the line for cutting out your pattern piece. Sometimes you'll see a series of lines. You're going to cut depending on what size each line is for. So if, for example, I'm doing 3, I follow the arrow up to the line where the arrow ends. That's going to be for size 3. So I would just cut along here, turn, and then cut along this line. So all this would get cut off. If it's just a solid line with no number associated with it, then that's going to be for all sizes. You're also going to want to make sure that you cut out your notches, which you can see right here. So either you could cut into the notch, so created a little triangle going inside the piece, or you can do one that goes outside the piece, so just a little outer triangle there, because we definitely want to make sure that we mark those. Now some of the pieces, 1 through 4, I have one right here. You'll notice that it'll have different lengths, and if you look at the bottom of some of the lines, it'll say cut here for A, B, and C, and then there'll be a longer line that says cut here for D. So they're just reusing the same piece, and if it's a longer dress, you're just cutting out on a different line. So you're still using the same piece, still following all the rules, but if you're doing, say, D, you would cut out one line as opposed to C. After you finish cutting out all your pattern pieces, you can then proceed with pinning them to your fabric. In order for us to figure out how we need to lay out our pattern pieces in order to make the most of the fabric and also to make sure that our grain line is going in the same direction, we're going to consult the layout directions. You can see some of them here, and you need to make sure you're looking at the right view. So at the top, you're going to see dress and belt D, and since we're doing D, then everything below it is going to relate to us. You can see here we have 45-inch and 45-inch. So they're showing you the layout that you would use if you're using 45-inch width fabric. The difference between these two is that this one is for sizes 3 through 6 and this is for sizes 7 through 14. So if, for example, you have 45-inch width fabric and you're doing size 3, you would just have to look at this setup right here. If you have 60-inch width fabric, then you're going to keep looking down and you'll see they have a similar setup, 60-inch, 60-inch. This is for sizes 3 through 6, and this is for 7 through 14. I have 60-inch with fabric. I'm doing size 3, so I just have to look at this setup. Now you'll see it says fold and salvages. This means that the width of the fabric, so the 60 inches, is folded in half with the salvages meeting up here, and then you have your fold. So then I'm laying out all my pieces, and when I cut out, say piece number 4, I end up with 2 number 4s because I'm doubling my fabric when I cut it out. Now you'll notice some here is white and some here is polka dot. The white pieces is telling you that the print side of the pattern is facing up towards you. If it's polka dot, that means they turned it so the print side is facing down towards the fabric. So this is telling you what pieces you need to cut out of your main fabric. So for example, you have 4 and it's right side facing up, and then you have 1 and it's wrong side facing down. Now 1 and also piece 7 need to be placed on the fold of the fabric. So when you pin and cut it out, you're just going to be pinning on this side, and then this little side right here. You can also pin along the fold line, but you're not cutting here. You're just cutting on the 3 sides. So when you open it up, you end up with a piece that's double the size of number 1, and it's going to be the same for number 7. Now you see number 7 3 times. It's because they want you to cut this out 3 times. So you would pin it, cut it out, remove the pattern piece, place it right next to where you cut it out, and then do it one more time. You can see it's kind of the same thing with piece number 8 because they want you to cut out 3 of the number 8 piece. So you just pin it, cut it out, you end up with 2, and then you'll see 8 with a star next to it. What this star means is they want you to cut out all the other pattern pieces first, and then whatever's left over in the fabric, you can go ahead and open it up because you only need to cut one more piece of number 8. Lastly, you need to cut out your lining pieces. So you're going to be reusing some of the same pieces in order to cut out your lining. And you're going to do 1, 2, and 3. 1 again is placed on the fold of the fabric. 2 is placed upside down. And then 3 is just up here at the top. One step that's very important is transferring the marks on the pattern pieces to your fabric pieces. And these marks will look like circles, they'll look like dots, they may look like triangles or squares. Whatever they are, you need to make sure that you what I like to do is I put my needle through my mark, and you only need to do it for your size. So I'm only doing it for where there's a 3 next to it. Now, if it's a square that doesn't have a size next to it, then it's for all sizes. So I put my pin right through the circle or dot that I'm going to, and on the wrong side of my fabric, I'll use my fabric marker and I'll just mark where my pin is coming into or out of my fabric. So I'll just mark it that way, but you'll definitely want to make sure that you transfer all marks to your fabric. We're almost ready to start sewing, but let's just take a quick peek at our sewing directions. First, we have our sewing information guide. Here you're going to see the seam allowance. So it's going to be 5/8 of an inch unless otherwise indicated. So if it just says do a seam, we're always going to assume it's going to be 5/8 of an inch unless they state something differently in the directions. Also, we have the fabric key. So this is how we're going to be able to read the picture directions that are with the written directions. So here you have the right side of the fabric if it's sort of the shaded look, and you can see that here. This is we're looking at the right side of the fabric or the right side of the garment. Just white is the wrong side of the fabric. You can see that here. We don't have to worry about interfacing because there's no interfacing in this project. Now if it's shaded with these little lines, such as right here, that means it's going to be the right side of the lining, and if it's white with the little lines, that's the wrong side of the lining. You can see that there. So at the beginning of the directions, usually it'll tell you which view it's for. Now if it doesn't say, like this one just says front and back, that's going to be for all views. So regardless if you're doing the top or the dress, you're going to go ahead and start with one, and you're going to continue down into the directions unless it states something differently, such as over here. It says for views A, C, and D. So if you were doing B, you can go ahead and skip this step until you actually find a step that is relating to B. Step 1, reinforce side edges of front and front lining through large circles as shown. Clip to large circles. Out of your piece number 1, you should have cut out 1 out of your lining and then 1 out of your main fabric. Marks from the pattern piece should have been transferred to your fabric piece, and you can see some of my circles here. There should be 2 large circles right on the edge here, my 2 large circles here. So on each of these pieces, I'm going to be stitching at my seam allowance, so at the 5/8 line, using a regular stitch. Just stitch a line from one big circle to the other big circle. I'm not stitching these 2 pieces together. It's just one individual layer, stitching from this circle to this circle. I only have them layered on top of each other so I can show both at the same time. I'm going to be doing it for the lining piece and also for my main piece, both sides. So this side and this side over here. And again, I would be doing the same to my main fabric as well. We're stitching in this area in order to reinforce this point of the garment. So I'm just starting on the outside of my first circle. You can see it right there, again at the 5/8 seam. I'm going to do a couple stitches and then a couple of back stitches. And I'm just doing a regular width stitch, going to the other large circle and then doing a couple of back stitches as well. To finish step 1 on both your lining and your main pieces, you're going to clip at the point where your circle is. Now, my circle's a little off, so you definitely don't want to cut into your stitches. Just in the same line of the circle and just cut as close as you can to the stitches. Step 2, turn front seam allowance to the inside between clips, press. This is my main fabric. This is the area where I just stitched right there between the 2 circles, and I went ahead and I clipped it. You can see it's just a little flap now. We're looking at the wrong side of the fabric now, so all they want you to do on both this side and the other side as well is, with the wrong side facing up, you're going to take this little flap, you're going to fold it over, so your stitching is pretty much going to be on the edge of the fold now, and all you're going to do is just press it with your iron. Step 3, turn front lining seam allowances to outside between clips, press. We're basically going to be doing the same thing we just did, but now to our lining piece, but the difference is we're folding it over to the right side now. So I have the right side of my lining facing up. Again, you're going to take your flap, you're going to fold it over. So your stitching is right on the fold line now because you're doing it the seam allowance, and you're going to press it, and you're going to do it for both sides of the lining. So with the main piece, you're folding the flap over to the wrong side, and for the lining, you're folding it over to the right side. Step 4, turn up 1 1/4 inches hem on lower edge of lining, base close to fold, turn in 1/4 inch on raw edge, press, stitch close to inner edge as shown. You're going to take your lining piece, and again, this is the front lining, and on the bottom edge here, we're going to fold up to the wrong side. So I have the wrong side of the lining facing up. I'm going to grab my sewing gauge and straight pins, and all along this whole bottom edge, go ahead and fold up 1 1/4 inches. So I'm just going to measure, and then once it's that measurement, I can go ahead and stick a pin right in it, and I'm just going to do it all along this bottom part. And then once it's all pinned up, what we're going to do is you're going to use a basting stitch and do it all along this bottom fold, real close to that fold line there. For basting on the edge, you're going to use your longest machine stitch that you have. The nice thing is you also don't have to worry about a back stitch. It's just a temporary stitch to help us do the hem on our lining. Next, you're going to take the top of the hem, so the raw edge here, and you're going to turn it under 1/4 inch. So then you have about 1 inch left. You can go ahead and pin this top part here. After you finish pinning the whole hem, you can go ahead and press it, and then we're going to take it back to the machine because then we're going to stitch right along the top of this fold line as well. When I stitch right along the top of this fold line here, I'm just going to go ahead and do a regular whisk stitch this time, not a basting stitch. And you can do a couple of back stitches on both sides because this one is going to be a permanent stitch in creating this hem. Step 5, pin right side of front lining to wrong side of front, matching centers and symbols. Baste raw edges together, slip stitch pressed edges together between clips. You're going to take your lining and you're going to lay it right onto your main fabric on the front. These are both the front. The wrong side of your lining should be facing up because the right side of the lining goes to the wrong side of the fabric. So it's right side to wrong side, and then the right side of this fabric is down towards the table. Once it's all matching up, and you'll notice this obviously is not going to line up with the bottom of this because we went ahead and hemmed this in the last step. Go ahead and pin these 3 edges together. You're going to do a basting stitch. So remember, that's the longest stitch on your machine. You're going to start here, and you can do it at the 5/8 mark again. So you're going to baste to here, and then you're going to stop. Start again here, baste up. You can go ahead and pivot again, and stop your basting stitch right here. Start it again, and then baste to the end right here. You'll notice you're not stitching in these areas here because I'm going to show you in the next part how to slip stitch these 2 pieces closed. All right, let's do the slip stitch now. So this is the area, remember, that we didn't do the basting stitch. And I went ahead and just pinned it just to hold it for now. I'm going to use a contrasting thread, so hopefully it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. Normally you like to use a matching thread, so it shouldn't show much at all. So you'll see there's 2 different parts. We have the lining section, the fold on the lining, and then you have your main fabric fold right here. All you're going to do is you have your needle on your thread. You're going to tie a knot at the end of the thread. I'm just going to come on the inside fold of my lining, not of my main fabric, just my lining only. So my needle comes up right on the fold. There's my knot. I'm just going to tuck my knot in there. All right, so now I'm on the lining. Now I'm just going to grab a little bit of my fabric fold. Try to keep my hand out of the way. And then I'm going to go back and grab a little bit of the lining. So I'm just basically going back and forth between the two folds. So after the lining, I'll grab a little bit of the fabric and then back to the lining until you get to the end, and then you just tie a knot. And don't forget to do the other side as well. Step 6, prepare back and back lining sections in the same manner as front and front lining. Essentially what we're going to be doing is taking our back pieces, which is pattern piece number 2, and we're going to do the exact same thing we just did for the front pieces. So from this piece, you make sure that you cut out 2 of your lining pieces and then 2 of your fabric pieces. So you should have 4 pieces total. Again, we have all of these marks that you need to transfer. On your side seam here, so this has like a slight curve, there's going to be 2 big circles that's going to be below the double notch. So just like we did before, you're going to be doing a stitch at the seam allowance right through the top circle and through the bottom circle and stop. If we move this out of the way, here's my circles. I did a stitch, and just like before, you're going to go ahead and cut right to your stitching line. You're going to do it for your lining, you're going to do it for your main fabric. And again, for the main fabric, you're going to take this little flap, you're going to press it to the wrong side of your main fabric. But for the lining, you're going to press it to the right side of the lining. Then you're going to create your hem on the bottom part of both pieces of the lining. So you're folding over to the wrong side of the lining piece. You're doing it 1 1/4, basting along the bottom fold. Then you're going to tuck the raw edge 1/4 of an inch and then do a regular stitch right along the top of that fold. Pair each of your back lining pieces with your back main fabric pieces. The wrong side of the fabric piece is going to go to the right side of the lining. Then you're going to baste along the side here. You're not going to baste here where you have your little square notch. So starting here, ending here, starting here, going over the top and down the bottom. Once your pieces are basted together, you're then going to do the slip stitch in this area here. Step 7, stitch back sections together at center back, leaving opening above large circle. These are both my back pieces, right side facing up. So all I'm going to do is take one, I'm going to flip it onto the other one so they're laying on top of each other, right sides together. And you'll see on one side it's going to be a straight edge with a triple notch. This side is more slightly curvy. This straight edge is going to be our center back. So what we're going to be doing is stitching a seam. So you're going to do a 5/8 seam starting at the bottom of the skirt, and you're going to stop when you get to this large circle above your triple notch. So all I'm going to do is just pin from here to here and then go ahead and do my seam. I'm starting at my large dot here, and I'm just doing a regular whisk stitch. Don't forget to back stitch, making sure I'm at the 5/8 line. Now my basting line was done at the 5/8 line, so I'm essentially just stitching right on top of that. After you finish stitching your seam, make sure that you press your seam open. Step 8, make 5/8 of an inch narrow hem on back opening edges, tapering to nothing below large circle. Pivot across seam allowance 1/4 inch below large circle when stitching. We're looking at the inside of the back. You can see that I pressed my seam allowance open, and remember, everything below the circle is the seam we just created. That's the one I pressed open, and everything above the circle is the opening because we didn't stitch that part. But I went ahead and pressed above the circle the same 5/8 on each side, so it just looks like a pressed seam allowance. Now if you went ahead and pressed above the circle as well, then the next step is going to make it a lot easier for you, because what we're going to do is on each side, this side and this side, you're going to take the raw edge and you're going to fold it so the raw edge touches the crease of where your seam allowance is. So all I'm doing is just lifting it up, folding it to that crease, and folding it back. I just pin it into place. And I would do the same thing on this other side as well. Take the raw edge, fold it to the crease I created when I pressed it open, and pin it. Now you only need to do this till about the point where you get to the circle. So if I just got to this point, I can go ahead, fold it, but then this bottom part you can go ahead and just let it taper back out again. Let me just raise this a little bit. So I would fold it to about here, and then continue to just let the seam allowance just open back up again, because we don't need to keep folding it down. The next part, what they want you to do is, on one side, we'll start with this side, pretend like this is all pinned. I'm just going to stitch a regular width stitch, don't forget to back stitch, right along this fold line that we're just creating. So I'd start here, I'm going to stitch right along the fold line. Now here's my circle, so I'm going to continue stitching along the fold line until I get 1/4 inch below the circle. So I probably stop about here, and then you're going to stitch across, and this side should also be folded as well. You're going to pivot, and then you're going to stitch right along the fold line on the other side until you get to the top, and then go ahead and back stitch again. I've already been stitching along one side, and you can see I'm just getting to my large dot here. So I'm going to continue about 1/4 inch past that, of course, along the folded edge here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just when it looks like it's about 1/4 inch. Right there is good. You can see I leave my needle in my fabric, I lift up my foot, and then I just turn the fabric. And I'm going to just sew to the other side till I get to the other fold. About right there, put my needle in the fabric, lift my foot, turn the fabric again, and then I'm just going to stitch up until I get to the other side. Step 9, reinforce side edges of side, front, and back through large circles, clip to large circles, reinforce and clip side, front, and back lining in the same manner. We're going to be working with piece 3 now, and like piece number 2, you should have 2 cut out of your lining, 2 cut out of your main fabric. We're going to be doing the same for all 4 pieces. You'll see that we have the large circles here, just like we did before. I mean, you guys should be experts at this by now. You're going to be doing your stitching at your 5/8 mark between the circles. You can see I've already done here and here. And then you're going to clip to your stitching right at the circles. Step 10, turn seam allowances of side front and side front lining to inside between clips. All you're going to do is you're going to turn your little flaps right here, so it's right where the stitching is going to be on the fold, to the wrong side of the fabric. Now before, when we did this for the lining, you flipped it over to the right side. In this particular case, for all 4 of these pieces, you turn it to the wrong side and you press it. Step 11, hem lower edge of side front and back lining in the same manner as front lining. You're going to take your lining pieces of pattern piece number 3, and just like with the other lining pieces, you're going to hem it up 1 1/4 inches. So I'm folding up to the wrong side. This is the bottom of it. You're going to baste across the fold. Then you're going to turn over the raw edge 1/4 inch, and then do a regular stitch right next to that fold line. Step 12, with right sides together, pin lining to side, front, and back, stitch upper edge, trim, under stitch lining. You're going to pair your lining with your main fabric, placing the pieces right side together. So the right side of the lining is going to the right side of your fabric, and you're going to have 2 sets of these. So here's one set. All they want you to do is stitch from here along this curve to here at the 5/8 inch seam allowance, which I've already done. Move this guy out of the way. So there you can see my stitches there at the top. After you finish stitching it, all you need to do is trim your seam allowance, because we're going to be doing an understitch up here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this. And I leave about 1/8 of an inch on. Now also, because it's curved, what I also like to do is I'll clip little notches into the curved areas, being careful not to cut into your stitches because we don't want to create any holes. And then we'll move to the machine so I can show you what an understitch is. Here's the seam I just created. Here's the trim seam and my little notches. So we're going to do an understitch right in the same area. I'm going to pull apart my lining and my main fabric. So here's my lining, my main fabric, and you can see where they're stitched together. You're going to make sure that your seam allowance, again, my seam allowance is going to stay closed and it's going to stay underneath the lining. So you're just going to pull all your seam allowance so it lies underneath the lining and it's going in this direction. And then we're going to start stitching on the side of the lining right along that seam line, but make sure your stitches are on the lining side and it doesn't switch over to your fabric side, because we want to make sure that our stitches go not only through the lining but also through the seam allowance that's underneath it. For this, I'm going to do a regular width stitch. You can go ahead and back stitch on both ends, and because it's a little curvy, I would take it slow, but that's basically all you need to do in order to create an understitch. Step 13, turn lining to inside, press, baste raw edges together above and below clips, slip stitch pressed edges together between clips. We're basically going to take our lining, we're going to flip it over to the other side of our main fabric. So all this area up here is enclosed in between them, and we're looking at the right side of both pieces. So you're going to make sure that you're going to press all along this top part right here. So your main fabric is on its side and your lining is on the correct side. And everything is nice and neat up here. We have a nice crisp curve. Then what you're going to do is you're going to baste the sides here, not where we have these little notches, but just from here to here, same on the side, and then from here down. And I've already have one done. So this is my other one, because you have two of them. And you can see my basting stitches. And then all you need to do to finish this up is you're going to slip stitch these areas. Step 14, reinforce ends of sleeve through large circles, clip to large circles. Stay stitch side edges of sleeve above small circles as shown. Turn in seam allowance between clips, press. We're going to now be working with piece number 4. So this is the sleeve. You should have cut out 2 out of your main fabric, and you'll know there's a variety of marks on this pattern piece. Right now we have these 2 big marks on both sides, so we have 2 circles on this side, 2 circles on the other side as well. Just like we did with our other pieces, you're going to want to stitch through each of these circles. So start here, stitch through and here, using a regular stitch and back stitch, because this is where we're reinforcing that one side. You also notice a small circle here on this side, and you also have one above the double notch on the other side as well. So you're going to start here and you're going to do your stay stitch, which is you're going to do a back stitch, you're going to do a regular stitch at the seam allowance 5/8 of an inch, and you're just going to stitch till you get to the top and then do another back stitch. So if I remove this pattern, you can see I've already done it. This is where I started the small circle, just did a regular stitch, 5/8 seam allowance, stopped here. I did it between my large circles here. And just like we did before, you're going to clip and you're going to turn it to the wrong side of your fabric and press it. So you're going to do it on this side, and you're also going to do it on that side over there. Steps 15 and 16 are for view A, so we're going to skip on to step 17. To view lower edge of sleeve, stitch 1/2 inch from raw edge. Turn in and press edge alongside stitching as shown. Trim very close to stitching. Turn in again along trimmed edge, stitch into place. We're going to take this one part at a time. So the first thing is you're going to get both your sleeves. We have this wide curve at the bottom of each sleeve piece, and on both of them what you're going to do is you're going to stitch a 1/2 inch from the raw edge. So you can see my stitches here, they're a 1/2 inch away, not 5/8, a 1/2 inch. You're going to start here, and you're going to stitch from one end to the other one. Once you're done with that, you're going to fold over to the wrong side of your fabric so that the stitching that you just did is going to be right alongside this fold line. You can still see the stitching because it's going to be right next to the fold line, but you're just going to press up the whole length of your hem. Next, you're going to trim to your pressed up hem. So I've already started here, and this is the part that's been pressed up, and you can see that I cut pretty close to my stitch, which is right here. So I'm only leaving about 1/8 of an inch off. So if you leave about 1/8 to 1/4 on there, that should be fine. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this part that's left and you're going to fold it over again. So it's going to be a very narrow hem here, and I've already started here. All you're going to do next is just stitch right along that top fold line there, and you're going to do it for both sleeves. Steps 18 through 21 are for view B, so we're going to skip to step 22. Pin wrong side of sleeves to right side of side, front and back, matching symbols. Baste raw edges together below small circles. Slip stitch pressed edges together between clips. Here's one of my sleeves, and you're going to be doing this for both sleeves, but I'm just going to show you as an example for this one. I have wrong side facing up. I'm going to grab my side, front and back. So that's, remember, this little piece that we did, which was piece number 3. So for both the sleeve, we have these little square notches, and we have the square notches as well on our piece number 3 here. This is what we're going to match up. So you're going to take 3, you're going to turn it over so the right side is facing down to the wrong side of the sleeve. This is the right side, face down to the wrong side of the sleeve. Now I'm going to take it over to one side, matching up the square notch. Obviously it's not going to come all the way to the top. Now we have a single notch on this side, a double notch on this side. So when I flip this over so the right side is to the wrong side, I need to make sure I have a single notch on this side and a double notch on this side. If it's flipped, it just means it goes with the other sleeve. So that's the only thing you need to pay attention to. So I'm going to match up the square notches, like I pin them. I'm going to make sure that these notches match up. So you might have to do some adjustment. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to pin this side here all the way here. After this side is pinned, you're going to go ahead and take this side and you're going to match it with the other side of the sleeve. So again, I'm matching my double notch with my double notch, the square notch with the square notch, and pinning from the bottom of the sleeve to here and from here to the top portion here. Now, just like you did with all your other pieces, once these are pinned, you can go ahead and baste the pieces together. You can just follow on the same basting stitch that you have here on your lining. Do the same thing here. So you're just basting that one side of the sleeve with the side, front, back. Now for these areas, again, you're going to slip stitch the folded edges together. Step 23, pin sleeve and side, front and back to front and back. Matching symbols, clipping sleeve where necessary above small circles, stitch above and below clips as shown, press seams toward front and back. We're now going to attach our sides with the sleeves to the back of the dress and the front of the dress. So this is my back, and I have the right side facing up, and I'm going to grab my two sides. So here's one side and here's my sleeves already attached to it. And then I'm going to grab my other one. And if you look at the back, of course, we have the square notches here. On each side of the back, we have a double notch and a double notch. So when I have my sides, right side facing down towards the right side of my back, I want to make sure I have the same thing. So I'm looking here at my side. I have a double notch. On this side, I have a double notch. On the inside of both of these, I have a single notch. So they're on the right side. All I'm going to do, I'm going to match the square notch. I'm going to match my double notches. The bottom of my number 3 piece here, the side, this fabric part is going to go to the bottom of the back. and your lining pieces should also match up. Any symbols that you have on the sides should also match. Now if we look at this top portion here, now this is the top of the sleeve. It actually fits perfectly with the side seam of our back here. So we're going to pin from here all the way down here. And I would do the same thing on this side. So I would lay it out, the top side of the sleeve comes up and matches the top part of the back here. So you're going to start with a regular stitch. Don't forget to back stitch your 5/8 inch seam allowance, stitch here, stop, start again here, stitch down, and I would do the same thing on here. Now for this particular case, we are not slip stitching the square notches. So what you're going to have, you're actually going to have a hole in your seam. And what this is for when we create the fabric belt, you're able to weave it through the dress. So that's going to be the hole for the belt. For the curved seams, don't forget, for any curved seams we do, you're going to cut little triangle notches into the seams. Just be careful not to cut into your stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and pin these all together, and we're going to pretend like I stitched it, and then I'm going to show you the next part of the step. Let's pretend I already stitched these sides onto the back. So the next step would be to open this up. So I'm looking at the front or the right side of the top of the sleeve and the side here. Now this is all the rest of my sleeve. I'm just kind of trying to keep it out of the way so I don't accidentally stitch it. I'm going to bring this side out as well. So here's my back, here's my two sleeves, here's my two sides, and you can see my square notches right here. I'm going to grab my front dress and I'm going to flip it so it's going to be right side facing down. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to match up the top of the front with the side of the sleeve. The square notches are going to match. The regular single notch is going to match, and the bottom is going to match here. After this is all pinned, I'm going to drag this over to this side and do the same thing again. And then just like we did with our back, you're going to do a regular 5/8 inch seam here and up here. Again, we are not slip stitching the square notches here because that is where our belt is going to weave through when we finish the dress. Step 24, stay stitch neck edge as shown. So now we're dealing with the neckline of our dress. So now it's all starting to come together. We have the front, we have the top of the sleeves, you have the back. All they want you to do is you're going to start on one end of the back. You're going to stitch all the way around and then end here. And you just need to stitch at the 1/2 inch line. Go ahead and do your back stitches and just do a regular width stitch. Step 25, open out one folded edge of bias tape, press lightly. Here's a sample of single fold bias tape, and you can see it's just folded over on each side. All they want you to do is just take one side, it doesn't matter which side, and you're going to unfold it, and then you're just going to lightly press it. And you can see I've already done it here. You just want to make sure that your iron is not too hot because we still want to be able to slightly see the crease, as that's going to come in handy in our next step. You can also cut your bias strip so it's a little bit bigger than the total of your neckline, so you don't have to do the whole package, as you probably don't need that much. Step 26, pin bias tape to neck edge, placing crease along seam line, extending ends 3/8 of an inch beyond opening edges. Stitch along crease, trim garment seam even with bias tape. We're now going to attach our bias tape that we just pressed open to the right side of our garment. So I just turned my dress right side out, and you can see I've already started pinning. I'm going to start at one end and pin it all the way around. And you just want to make sure that on both ends you extend the bias tape 3/8 of an inch past the end of the garment. So from here to here is 3/8 of an inch, and I would do the same thing on this side as well. So the bias tape, the side that you can see the other fold, like here's my other fold right here, this is the wrong side of the bias tape. So the right side of the bias tape gets pinned to the right side of my garment. And the crease that we still have, because we didn't press too hard, is going to go at the 5/8 mark of the neckline. Now if you have your old basting stitches, which I still have from way back in the beginning, I can use that as a guideline because I did that at the 5/8 line. So I'm just going to follow along with that, and then I'm going to pin it. Once it's all pinned all the way around, you're going to again use the crease as a guideline, because you're going to start here using a regular width stitch, stitch all the way around the neckline, but you're going to be right in the groove of that crease. Here's a little bit of a closer look of the bias tape. Here you can see my crease, so we're just going to try to stay right in that crease as best we can, going all the way around the neckline, and don't forget to backstitch. Lastly, trim your seam allowance so it gets just to the top of the bias tape. Step 27, turn bias tape to inside, turning under ends. Press, baste into place, slip stitch ends on outside, stitch close to basted edge. I turn my dress wrong side out again. Here is the bias tape we just attached. All they want you to do is on each end, this end and this end, you're going to fold up your bias tape. It should fold naturally because it's right on that crease that we stitched. You're going to take the ends, you're going to fold them inward so we have a nice clean folded edge here on the outside. And then you're going to fold this whole thing onto the inside of the garment. So on the inside you have the full width of the bias tape, and on the outside you just see your main fabric. Your seam line is right on that fold line. So you're going to go ahead and do this for the whole neckline. I'm going to go ahead and start pinning this into place, because the next part is after it's pinned, you're going to baste down real close to this folded edge all along the bottom of the bias tape. Here you can see my basting stitch on the right side of the garment. So all I would do now is flipping your garment right side out, you're going to do a regular stitch right alongside that basting stitch. That's going to be your top stitch right there. And that's going to finish off the collar. I would just do it on the inside of the basting stitch, since I did this right on the fold. So this would be right next to the fold line. Also, you're going to want to slip stitch the ends here, because these are still opened on this side and on this side. So just put a few slip stitches on there too. Dress D continues with step 32. Stitch lower ruffle sections together at ends. Gather upper edge of ruffle as shown. We're going to be working with piece number 7. So there's 3 of these that you should have cut out of your fabric on the fold. So when you open it up, it was one long strip. So you're going to take all 3 pieces, and we'll just take 2 for now. But what you're going to do is you're going to lay them right side together, so right side to right side, and you're going to stitch the short end. Then after it's stitched, we'll take this end here. So this is one of the ends of one of them stitched together. I'm going to grab my other one and place it right side together. Go ahead and stitch your 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now this end of the third one, the short end, is now going to be stitched to the end of the first one. So basically you're going to get one big circle of these little strips. To finish this step, the last thing we need to do is to create our gathering stitches. So that is creating 2 basting stitches. You have one at the 5/8 line and one at the 3/8 line. And you're just going to make sure that you use the largest stitch on your machine. There's 2 rows at the top of the ruffle piece all the way around. This is going to help us gather the top and create the ruffle. Now I start one of sets of my stitches at the seam line. I have a seam line right here, so I go ahead until I get to the next seam line, and then I stop, and then I start again on the seam line after that one. That way you're not just pulling one set of threads all the way around the ruffle, but you can just do pieces at a time. So it just makes it a little bit easier. Step 33, hem lower edge of ruffle in same manner as ruffle 5. essentially what we're going to be doing on the bottom of our ruffle piece. Remember, the top has the gathering stitches, so now we're looking at the bottom portion of the long edge of the ruffle. We're going to be doing the rolled hem, and this is the same hem that we created for our sleeve. So you're going to, and I have it wrong side facing up, you're going to stitch a 1/2 inch from the bottom edge of the raw edge of your fabric. Then you're going to fold it up so you can just see the stitches right here near the fold line, and you're going to press it. Then you're going to trim your seam allowance, which I started doing over here. So you're leaving just a little bit left near the stitching. From there, you're just going to roll it up. You can go ahead and pin it or press it if you wish. And then we're going to stitch right along that top fold line there, completing the hem. Step 34, pin ruffle to lower edge of dress, placing one seam at center back and remaining seams at large circles on front. Adjust gathers, baste, stitch, stitch again 1/4 inch away in seam allowance, trim close to stitching, press seam toward dress. We're now going to attach our ruffle to the bottom of our dress. So this is my dress, this is the bottom. I just have the dress facing upside down, and it's right side facing out. Now you'll notice on the dress front, this is the front, that you'll have a large circle here, a large circle here. In the ruffle piece, there should be 3 seams. So we're going to match one seam from the ruffle with this circle, the second seam with this circle, and the third with the center back. Now it doesn't matter which seam you start with, any seam will do. You just need to know seam, seam, and then seam. So I'm going to pull in my ruffle piece, and we're going to match right side of ruffle with right side of dress, and the side that has the gathering stitches, that raw edge is going to line up with the raw edge of the dress. So I'm going to just find a seam here in my ruffle, and I have one right here. Here's a seam. So I'm just going to match it up with one large circle or with the center back seam. It doesn't matter where you start. Grab some pins here, and pin it into place. Then I'm going to find my next seam. So I have a seam right here. Going to pin it to the next circle or the back seam. And then I'm just going to kind of see how it fits. It seems like it's a little big, so that's why we created the gathering stitches. So I'm just going to pull them out here. And all you're going to do is pull the stitching, and it's going to gather it some more. And that's what's going to create the ruffle look. So you just kind of have to keep pulling it until it starts cinching in and fitting the area between these 2 large circles. And then I would do the same thing by finding my other seam and matching it to the back, and then gathering as well and gathering this area until the whole ruffle is pinned and attached. Once it's all pinned, all you need to do is, first I would baste, just attaching the ruffle to the skirt, so then you can take out the pins. After you baste the ruffle to the bottom of this dress, you can stitch your 5/8 inch seam allowance, then go up 1/4, so then that's going to be 3/8. So stitch at 5/8, stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance, 3/8 seam allowance, and then you're going to trim your seam allowance here, so it's just above that second stitch, and then press your seam allowance towards the dress. Step 35, sew button to right back opening at marking. Make thread loop at opening edge opposite button as shown, large enough for button to pass through. Now we're looking at the top of the back of the dress. This is our opening to the back, and this is our front dress. The dress is right side out. Now if you were to look at the original pattern piece for 2, you would notice that there was an X at the very top of the pattern. This is my X right here. My ink's kind of bled, so it doesn't look like it. What I'm going to do is on the right hand side, I'm going to place my button because that's where it's going to be stitched on. Now you can either use a shank button or a flat button, it doesn't really matter. And if you use a flat button, you can either sew it on by hand or use your sewing machine. I'm going to sew it on by hand. So I have my needle and thread here. I'm just going to make sure that when I'm stitching it, I'm coming up from underneath the back here. So my knot is going to be hidden on the inside of the dress. Then I'm going to go through the holes about 5 or 6 times to make sure it's secure, and then finish off by tying a knot in the back again. On the other side of the opening, I'm now going to create a thread loop so that I'm able to loop it through the button. So I'm first going to see about where I want to start my thread loop. I'm going to start it at the bottom of the button, about here. So I'm going to grab my needle and thread, and I'm using just a long piece of thread that I folded in half, and then I tied a knot at the end, so it's a little bit thicker than normal. All right, so I'm actually going to turn this over to the back, and I'm just going to go through, coming up about where I want the bottom of my loop to start, and pull it through. So you can see now my knot is going to be hidden on the inside. And just to make it a little bit more secured, I'm going to go through this point where my thread came out a couple of times just to anchor the point where I'm going to do it, just to make it a little bit stronger. Okay, so now that's done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to bring my needle so it comes out at this bottom point. Trying to find that, there we go. Now I'm not going to pull it all the way through because I want to create the basis for my loop. So I'm just putting my finger there to hold it, and then I'm going to test it to make sure that that's going to be big enough for my button. So it could probably be a little bit smaller. All right, so that looks good. So now once I have that, I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to start by going at the top portion of my loop and then coming out at this point down here. Just be careful not to pull this through anymore because we don't want to make it any smaller. And then once that's done, we can start the other part of it. Okay, that should be good. So I'm going to put my finger through my loop to make sure it doesn't get any smaller as I bring the other loop over it. So they're going to be about the same size. There they go. All right, so now we're going to stitch around the loops in order to make a single loop. So you're going to come through both the loops, and you're going to be creating another little loop right here. And all I'm going to do is bring my needle through that loop. Just be really careful. Everything stays straight. And you're just essentially tying a knot down here at the bottom. So there's my first part. Then I'm going to go through the loop. You create another loop. See this loop right here? And I'm going to go through it. And that's going to create a second knot. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I go from one end of the loop to the other end. So I'll show you one more time. Through the loop, you create another loop here, and you're going to go through that loop. So you're just tying a knot, making sure that the knot is next to the one that you just created before, like that. So you can see my 3 knots right there and how it's binding all my strands together. You're basically just doing a blanket stitch around your thread loop here. So I'm going to start here and then I'm going to finish here. Step 36, stitch belt sections together, leaving one end open. So now we're going to be working with our last piece. We're going to be doing the belt and then we're done with our dress. So this is going to be piece number 8. Now you should have cut 3 out of your main fabric out of this piece. Basically all we're going to be doing is taking all 3 sections, stitching them together at one end in order to create one long strip, which would be the belt. So I have 2 of my pieces here. I'm going to place them at one short end, right side to right side. Just move this over a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the short ends, stitch a 5-inch seam allowance, press my seams open, open this up, grab my last piece, same thing, right sides together at the short end, pin and stitch the 5/8 seam allowance and then press that open, and then that's it, and you would have one long strip. Step 37, with right sides together, fold belt along fold line, stitch, leaving an opening, trim. You're going to take your belt strip and you're going to lay it all out nice and flat, right side facing up. You're going to take one raw edge, fold it basically in half in order to meet the other raw edge. And you're going to pin all along this side because this is where we're going to stitch. I've started it and you can see that even on the short ends, I went ahead and pinned it, because what we're going to do is you're going to stitch your 5/8 seam allowance from the top fold line down towards this bottom edge. You're going to pivot and then you're going to stitch across the bottom portion here. Now the thing is, we need to leave an opening because we need to eventually, after we stitch this, flip our belt right side out. So for me, what I like to do is I'm just picking a point in the middle of my belt. I'm going to take a couple of pins, make them form an X, and then let's say about 3 or 4 inches away from that, I'm going to do another set. This is going to be an indicator to me where I do not sew. So I'm going to be stitching along, come to my first X, stop, back stitch. Between these X's, no stitching. So then I'm going to start here, stitch along the bottom edge again, come all the way to the end, pivot and stitch up to the fold line. After you finish stitching it, you can go ahead and trim your seam allowance. So you could trim it just to about your stitch line. Be careful not to cut into your stitch line. Last step, step 38, turn, press, slip stitch opening. So you're going to take your belt and from the opening, you're going to flip the whole thing right side out and you're going to press it. Now with the opening, I'm just turning in the raw edge on each side, the 5/8 of an inch, and then you're going to pin the opening close. And all that's left to do is just to slip stitch the opening, and then your belt is complete and your dress is complete. Don't forget to remove all your basting stitches and your fabric markers. This has been McCall's 6690. We know that any little girl who is lucky enough to receive this dress is going to be beautiful in it. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 150 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!